Hi ladies, welcome back for part 2 of Breathing Room. I mentioned last week that Andy and I have 3 kids, and now that our kids are grown and out of the house, we're empty nesters. And let me tell you, parenting grown kids is the best. It's been so fun for us to watch them start making some big life decisions, taking their first jobs, getting their first apartments. And this year, we're navigating something new. My middle son recently got engaged. It's so fun as a mom to share this season of life and welcome someone into our family for the first time. So of course, Garrett did what many guys do. He planned a proposal and bought a diamond ring. And I thought that's what guys have been doing forever. But I recently learned that the tradition of the diamond engagement ring is less than 100 years old. Marking an engagement with a ring dates back centuries, but the diamond part, it's a fascinating story. A huge diamond mine was discovered in South Africa in the late 1800s, making diamonds widely available for the very first time. As these new diamonds began to flood the market, the mine owners worried that the price would drop, so they hatched a plan. The best way to keep the price of diamonds high would be to limit the supply. So they joined forces to launch one company that would eventually control almost all the world's supply. And then they limited the number of diamonds that they sold. Now let's pause for a quick economics lesson. A limited supply drives the price of an item up. The less there is of something, the more valuable that thing becomes. So for decades, that strategy worked great. Diamonds continued to bring in top dollar. But by the 1930s, in the midst of the Depression and with a world war looming, fewer and fewer people could afford to buy diamonds, so the scheming began again. This time, they launched an ad campaign convincing consumers that diamonds were the ultimate gift of romance, making sure every movie star and socialite was photographed with a diamond engagement ring. And again, it worked. In fact, it's still working today. How many of your married friends wear a diamond ring? Most of them, I bet. Diamonds are so valuable because the supply is limited and the demand is almost universal. It's precisely the same thing with our time. The supply is limited, yet there's practically unlimited demand for a piece of it. That's why today we're going to talk about creating breathing room in your schedule. And here's what I hope you'll see. Just like diamonds, your time is precious because it's in limited supply. The challenge for us is behaving like we understand that. Interestingly, this isn't unique to our day and age. We may feel like we're more frantic and frazzled and overcommitted than ever, but as we'll see in Scripture, the challenge of wisely spending our limited time is centuries old. We talked about Moses last week, and today we're dipping back into his story a few decades down the road. By the time he writes these words, he's lived through some pretty big ups and downs in different seasons of life, and now he's an old man. He begins Psalm 90 the way my grandfather or your grandfather might, by looking back over life and talking about how quickly time passes. Then, in verse 12, he introduces an idea that could change everything for us as it relates to creating breathing room in our time. Teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. We don't typically use the words number our days, but we all do it. If you've ever had a work deadline or a wedding to plan or a baby coming or even just celebrated Christmas, you knew exactly how many days you had until the big event. And knowing that your time was limited forced you to limit what you did with your time. When Christmas was just 3 days away and you still had a bunch of gifts to buy, you didn't lounge on the couch watching television. You didn't have time. When a big presentation was coming up at work, you didn't reply to every minor email in your inbox. You had some higher priority things to do. In this verse, Moses is asking God to help us live our whole lives with this perspective, to live like we understand the value of the limited supply of time. This is the only way to keep some breathing room in your calendar. If you forget this truth, the current of culture will swallow up every spare minute you have. Remember as a kid making a countdown chain out of construction paper? You would tear off links counting down to a big vacation or to the end of the school year. My kids did red and green ones every year before Christmas. And these chains were so fun because you could see how many days you had left to wait. Because we don't know the exact number of days remaining in our lives, we spend our time as if our countdown chain goes on forever. As if we're always going to have time, always going to have our parents with us, always going to have this job, always going to have our kids at home. But we know that's not true. I've dropped 3 kids off at college. I can tell you, the days might seem long, but the years are truly short. Moses points out in today's verse that when we acknowledge that our time is limited, we gain a heart of wisdom. In other words, we can wisely decide what, or more importantly, who, is worth our limited time. Without applying this filter, do you know what drives our schedule? Fear. Just like we talked about last week. Maybe you're afraid of missing out or disappointing others, so you RSVP yes to a party you don't even really want to attend. Maybe you're afraid of not mattering, so you volunteer to chair the school fundraiser. Maybe you're afraid of falling behind, so you sign up for a gym membership or a night class. And again, these fears trick us into making the wrong choice. They convince us to prioritize people or activities that won't matter to us in the long run. We accidentally ignore the people who are most important by giving our time away to things that are ultimately not even important at all. Ladies, the demand for your time will always be high, which is why we need to view it as precious and stop giving it away carelessly. There's a hard truth wrapped up in acknowledging that our time is limited, and that truth is we don't get any do-overs. We don't get to repeat our 20s or our single days or the newlywed stage. We don't get to add any links back onto the countdown chain. If we don't view it as precious, we have the potential to be heartbroken over the time we misspent and can't get back. Sure, you may have busy months or even busy seasons, but life is just better with breathing room. It's better when you're not running late to everything, dashing from appointment to appointment. It's better when you have the downtime for a spontaneous date with your spouse or an adventure with your best friend. The way to create this breathing room is to embrace that your time is limited, so you need to limit what you do with your time. This week, as you follow along in the book, you're going to tackle some tough choices, and I'm going to push you to make some practical changes. We want this God-sized perspective to trickle down into the details of your schedule so that you can look back on each season of life with the satisfaction of having spent your time on the right things and, more importantly, on the right people.